Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm actually going to be talking about a film that, for review, that a friend of my dad's allowed him to borrow for a little bit. My dad and I actually just got done recently watching it, and I finally got a chance to review the film for you. So before we loan it back to the person he borrowed it from, for today's review, I'm going to talk about the film Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I guess a friend of my dad's really enjoyed this film, and so he wanted my dad to borrow it. And I guess something at work because they work together. Um, Something at work happened that something about like connecting with his sense of humor or something along that line, and it somehow went into the direction of him allowing my dad to borrow this movie. But end of that part. So for Tucker and Dale versus Evil, since I was around when my dad was watching this, basically these college kids are going off to the forest one weekend. There's some type of rental cabin they're going to use up there, and they encounter these hillbilly guys who they either work at a gas station or they notice them there or something. And they're kind of freaked out by them. They talk about them in their car on the way up, and it very much has a setup like Evil Dead or Friday the 13th, something along that line. It definitely has that vibe and that feeling to it. It definitely has that setup for it as well. And so they later on the trip encounter these hillbillies again, and they're fishing, and one of them falls into the water and basically gets hurt, goes unconscious. And so these kids, they see this happen and they think that these hillbillies are responsible for this. They think that they're out to, hurt them or kill them or, do something that, basically a stereotype would label it for these two guys. And so basically, since they basically left their friend there, they take this girl back to their place, which is also in this forest area that these college kids are trying to go vacation at. And so they let her recover at their place. And at first, kind of like your stereotypical horror film, she thinks that they're going to kill her. That they poisoned her food and things like that. And so these guys are looking in. They track down these guys where they live, and at first, they think that they're trying to victimize her. There's even one part where they think that they're trying to make her bury her own grave when they kill her, and so they think all these things that would normally happen in a horror film. And in a way, that's kind of an interesting part of this film is the fact that these kids are thinking basically what they see in movies for horror films like this. And so the film kind of plays off that idea of what if these teenagers are basing all of this off of things that they would see in horror films like Friday the 13th or Evil Dead. And so as the film progresses, and basically these guys are trying to, hurt these hillbillies and things like that. And so basically what happens is they almost get killed off accidentally in a way. So like there's one scene where one of these hillbillies is working with a wood chipper. One of these guys falls into the wood chipper. One of them runs into a tree and slams into it hard enough where it kills him. And so basically these guys are being killed off by accident, and from outsiders' perspective, it looks like these hillbillies are killing everybody off. And throughout the rest of the story, it progresses. And I won't get into too much detail because it might be some spoilers for the film for those who wish to see this eventually. But basically, one of these college kids has a back history with hillbillies, and from there, there's kind of a turn of events. At first we think it's these hillbillies that are going to be, the villains of the film. But like I said, due to turn of events, somebody who you would never expect to become a villain, in a way, becomes the villain of the story. And so that's why it's called Tucker and Dale versus Evil, because they're always in the worst possible place at the worst possible time, making people believe that they're these really villainous hillbillies who are out to kill whoever gets to their property in the forest, like a horror film such as this would normally do, but it's done in a very comedic fashion. So Tucker and Dale versus Evil, you guys, I will give the film credit. I think the setup of the film is fun. I do think um, I think they definitely had the right, um, place in their hearts of making this film, as far as like, we'll make it look like a horror film, but it's going to play out like a comedy. Basically, like I was just saying before, these guys are at the worst place at the worst time, making it look like they're these killers of these teenagers, like it is your stereotypical cabin in the woods, Friday the 13th or Evil Dead kind of film. But basically, it's all purely accidental. And due to turn of events, there's a completely different direction it goes in. And in a way, these two hillbillies almost become the lead protagonist of the movie in a way. So for the positives and negatives of this film, like I said, I think the concept of this film and the setup for this film are both really fun. I think they definitely had the right idea on paper for what they wanted to do for this movie. You know, they had the idea in mind. But I'll get into a little bit more detail when I get to the negatives. There's just certain parts of the execution of this film that just don't quite feel right. I think the film's look and vibe was definitely on track with where they needed to go with this. It definitely had an Evil Dead and Friday the 13th vibe with it. And I think that look and feel for this film was definitely the right choice. And I like how they tried to make a comedy off of something that would normally be a horror film. There is some attempted story building moments in this film, specifically with the girl that gets knocked unconscious and these two hillbillies are taking care of her in their house. She gets into detail of what she's going to college for, how she knows all these people. I think one of them's a sociologist or something like that. And, she's trying to resolve things in one scene. And there is some attempted story building moments. And I do appreciate the director for at least trying to do that because there is a lot of films in this um, the same like genre and subgenre that try to attempt it or they never do it. And I like how at least they try doing it in here. And I think with a better script, I think these story building moments would have been even better with an even better script. I liked the whole old victim turned villain switch up that happens in this film. I won't get into too much detail, like I said, because there are some potential spoilers if I do go into detail about it. But I do like that idea of things kind of being switched up. What would normally be the victims of the film almost become the villains of the film, and the people who you thought were going to be the villains of the film, are almost become the heroes of the film. So I liked that switch up that this film did. I think that was a very unique idea. But like I said, it just wasn't executed correctly. For the negatives of this film, I do think probably the biggest problem I had with this film was there were several forced horror elements. Either the kills were forced or they happened just because the director wanted them to happen. There was just several forced horror elements in this, and I think that's what really drags this film down. What could have been a really fun, turn of events kind of horror comedy, but just really some badly forced horror elements that happened in the movie. Like I was saying before, this film has a terrible execution. It has some horrible writing. It just really, I think it just needed a different writer and a different director who really knows how to handle comedy really well. Because it was quite clear that whoever made this film clearly understands horror and the whole Evil Dead, Friday the 13th kind of vibe films. But I think the comedy of this film just really needed a tune-up. It didn't feel right. So I think the execution and the writing of this film was another huge factor as to why this film was such a letdown. Also, I didn't like the overly dumb college kids used in this film. Not a single one of these college kids were smart. If you're next to a wood chipper, don't jump into it. Jump on the guy. It's just like, don't even jump on the guy. It's just like, these kids can't think. They go through, like this girl was saying, psychology courses and sociology courses and English courses and math courses, but they don't know how to handle a situation like this. And it's just like, I really need some more intelligent characters to be in this film because there's really nobody to root for at this rate. Also, I think the film is it looks like a very cheap looking production. There's a lot of scenes that really feel like they're on a set somewhere. It really makes the suspension of disbelief really hard to overcome just because it really looks cheap in certain scenes. There's really some scenes in here that really look like they're done on a cheap set somewhere. The overall production just looked cheap, and I really wish that even if it was a low budget production, maybe find a way to, I don't know, make it look like it's not done cheaply. Some of the kills in this film are also very unbelievable. Just it really these some of these kills just really felt forced. They really felt like they were killed off just because the storyline demanded it to happen and for the story to move on and for these kids to get killed off it randomly so that the story could progress. So really just some not believable kills here. There was also some awful CGI and over exaggeration, specifically a scene where Dale throws an axe and unleashes somebody who's tied up in a rope. Some really stupid stuff like that happens in this film, and it really drove me nuts after a while. So overall, guys, I give Tucker and Dale versus Evil a 5 out of 10. I think there is, like I said, it has the right setup, it has the right concept, it has it has the right look and vibe that it needs. Some of the story building moments I appreciate the effort for, and I like the whole old victim turn villain scenario. But there was just some really bad forced horror elements, a really bad execution, some bad writing, overly dumb college kids, some kills that just really don't feel believable, cheap looking production, and just some really awful CGI and over exaggerations that ultimately wear the film down. And I think it deserves only a 5 out of 10 simply because, like I said, I appreciate the effort, I appreciate the concept and setup, but it's just not done correctly. And because of that, I really can't recommend this film. So 5 out of 10 for me, really nothing special here. I think with a better script, a better storyline, and just a better writer and director, I think this could have been a lot of fun. But unfortunately, it was not. So, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, don't see this one. It's a skip. Even if you like the concept that they used for this film, it really was not done correctly. So, be sure to skip this one. It's really not worth your time.